It's another week and another brand new episode here on the Granny Panty Podcast. I'm your host, RubyLynne. Before we go too far, be sure you hit the subscribe and turn on that notification bell because I don't want you to miss an episode. If you'd like to follow me, your host, you can go to rubylynne.bio where it's all things Ruby. This week's guest, I am super excited to bring on because I have not had a financial expert on the show yet. I recently had the pleasure of meeting Mia Lee, who is a sex worker and a financial expert. She worked on Wall Street for many, many years. So I think you're going to find her information very helpful. So help me welcome Mia Lee. Mia, I'm so excited to have you on the show this week. Thank you so much for making the time to come on and talk about your expertise.
Ruby, I am so excited to be on your podcast. I listened to the episode with Jessie and her mom, and I just thought that your presentation was so amazing, so insightful, so accessible and relatable. And I'm so honored that you have invited me on to your podcast.
Well, I discovered you in a closed group a few months ago that you were talking about banking and, banking discrimination and just your experience. And I was very drawn to you. So I felt lucky to be able to meet you and have dinner while we were in LA. So I think you have important information that my viewers will definitely use. So can you start from the beginning, kind of introduce yourself and talk about what you do, and then we can get into some questions.
Sure. So I'm Mia Lee. I was a former Wall Street gal. I worked in finance for about 12 years before I became a sex worker. And for those of you who are not familiar with finance, so if you're familiar with finance, my answer is that I did forensic accounting and bankruptcy restructuring. If you are not familiar with finance, I would tell you, if you've seen the movie Pretty Woman, I had Richard Gere's job.
Oh, I love it. I love
it. So that's my description of my prior finance experience.
Yeah.
I am currently licensed as a CPA, a certified public accountant, and a registered investment advisor. So 2018, I started working as a high-end escort in New York. And a few years later, I started adding stripping to my portfolio. And then I also dabbled in a little bit of content creation, although it's not really my focus in my adult business. So last quarter of last year, well, I'll say 2024, a couple of my finance buddies and I started an investment management financial advisory firm for adult entertainers. So I'm here in my capacity as Mia Lee, CEO of Mia Lee Financial, to talk about financial literacy and provide information that's useful to our community and the general public.
Yes, I love the fact that you are a sex worker. So you're kind of joining, you're like the glue in the middle, I think, that will give us good advice. I know for me, when I heard you speak in this private group that I was in, I can't even say how many times I was like, oh, we did that wrong. Darn, I should have, just the different things about bank accounts and structuring them and personal account versus business and that kind of thing. So I want to touch on that today too.
I'm sorry, I did not mean to interrupt you. I do want to say, when a lot of people, especially adult entertainers, approach me and they're like, oh my God, I did that wrong. Oh my God, I did that wrong. And I think as an industry, we just have so much money trauma and financial anxiety for very good reason. I came in with a very different perspective and a whole lot of privilege from having come from a different industry with a different expertise. So I didn't experience most of that, I'll say. No, I don't want to say
Okay.
any.
Right.
But I did grow up incredibly poor. So I was a Chinese
Mhm.
political refugee and I grew up in foster care. So I was 19 when I started on Wall Street, not because I was a genius. I was
Wow.
just freaking broke and my scholarship ran out and I started working early because yeah, I mean, I skipped a couple grades earlier in my like primary education,
Mhm.
also out of poverty, like not because I was a genius, just, you know, like one was bad school district, bad ESL
Right.
program, like taught myself how to read, skipped third grade. And then high school, like my fifth foster home or whatever,
Wow.
bad neighborhood, lots of gangs, graduated early. So I ended up in college at 16, then
Mhm.
graduating at 19 because I was broke and my scholarship ran out. So I basically, the TLDR is that when I started on Wall Street at 19, I was completely broke, completely financially illiterate, had no context. I did not grow up with
Wow.
any kind of like privilege. So I have the context of having been poor and then
Mhm.
coming into the adult industry, I obviously had a lot of privilege from both a financial and like intellectual career capital standpoint.
Right.
And when I saw the deficit of both financial literacy and also just the ubiquity of money
Mhm.
trauma, I started doing pro bono work in the industry about 5 years ago, just like podcast appearances, teaching,
Yeah.
seminars. Anytime someone would ask me to speak, I used to teach this like how to self file your taxes and TurboTax thing. So I started doing that, and
Mhm.
that sort of gained traction. And then my one of my fraternity brothers from college, who's been a Wall Street portfolio manager his entire career, was
Mhm.
like, Immediately Financial or MLF, it was actually his idea. I can't even take any credit for it.
Aw.
So, I mean, I can take some credit for it because it's my company, and it's built on my brand and the
Right.
reputation and trust that I've built within the adult industry.
Mhm.
But it wasn't my idea; it was my co-founder's idea. So we launched this company to address what we believe to be a need and skill deficit, and also a profit center in the industry,
Mhm.
right? So it's kind of like a hopefully a win-win for everybody, right? Like
Right.
we're not a nonprofit, we're making money on this, but we wanted to also offer a service that had some utility or substantial utility to the industry.
It is definitely needed. Yeah, I can't say it enough. It's funny. I do I have a local financial advisor who really doesn't advise on anything. It's more like just manages my corporate what was it, 401k that transferred out when I quit corporate world to do, adult full time. And the other day, I was talking to him about it because, as you know, I mean, I'm very transparent. I have an account with you. I'm looking forward to working. I just funded that account, and
I was
I
actually
want.
just about to ask you if you're okay disclosing that because obviously very stringent regulations around client privacy. So I'm
Yeah.
glad you said it first.
Oh no, I'm totally fine with it, and I'm looking forward to working with you and your folks. But
Likewise.
anyway, I said something about my business, and he said, "Oh, what kind of business do you have?" And I'll disclose that it's an Edward Jones, which drives me crazy because what happened is we got handed off to someone that
Yes.
we were never consented to. But so anyway, I said, "Oh, I'm I'm an actress. I do that." And so he started really drilling me about what movies. And finally I just said, "Well, if you're on Pornhub, then you would have seen some of my work." And he just goes, "Oh." And what's he going to do? Fire me? Great. Then I'm bringing everything over to you. I mean, which I probably will eventually do anyway, but that's the stigma.
Well, yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up because one of the things I've talked to so many adult entertainers about is that I'm, when you said, oh, we did this wrong, like,
Mhm.
I'm here to help you. I'm not here to judge you. I want to reduce your anxiety, not add to it. So I think as women, a lot of us, because the adult entertainment industry leans very heavy toward
Mhm.
models who are femme or femme identifying.
Right.
And we're just so socially conditioned to apologize and blame ourselves. And
Right.
I kind of say, fuck the patriarchy, and we need to stop apologizing and
Yep.
just move forward and say thank you or whatever the heck it is that we need to do to be more productive because we're all wasting our energy and time apologizing or feeling bad about mistakes that we made in the past. Like, and
Right.
I tell all of my clients, and even my friends and my colleagues, I just say, like, look, I don't even need to know what happened to get you in the situation that you are uncomfortable with. I just want to resolve it. And you only need to tell me if, one, you're comfortable telling me, and two, I only want to hear it if knowing how you got into the situation is going to help us moving forward, right?
I was just
So
going to say, is it helpful information or not, right?
exactly. So when you mention your financial advisor, when you mentioned that you were unhappy with, like, well, first of all, this is the first time I'm hearing about like the O and the stigma and the judgment. So I'm sorry about that happened to you. And more importantly, I think, well, first of all, on that point, I think that in my company and my co-founders and I just have this opinion that is so obvious to us, but not shared by other people, especially in finance. This industry is so profitable. There's so much money to be made on the business to business B2B side and the business to consumer B2C side. Like, it is so insane to me that any financial institution would stigmatize. I mean, I'll say compliance aside, right? There are certain things they can't do because of compliance and legal reasons, and
Right.
that I completely understand. But the judgment and the stigma that is outside of what is legally required by like compliance and laws, I don't understand. I'm just like, dude, like, you are in the money making business. So, and this is a highly profitable industry, like extremely cash flow positive, extremely underserved, unsaturated. It is crazy to my co-founders and me that, for example, your financial advisor at Edward Jones gave you any kind of discomfort. It wasn't like, oh, that's amazing. Like, the appropriate response would be, that's amazing, must be great money. Like, anything affirmative to make you feel comfortable, because I want you as a client, right? I want every adult entertainer as a client, because I know that we bitches make money. And I'm like, that's such stupid business. Like, you mentioned to me at dinner that you were very unhappy with the returns that this person was generating for you. Over this, discussing that with my chief investment officer. And we were both like, that's insane. The last 5 years, markets have been hitting all-time highs, have been on a freaking tear. Like, I was like, are you kidding me? Like, give that to me and I will make sure you are happy with your returns. Not that I can't guarantee you returns, but I can tell you that we will give you appropriate market risk and exposure based on your circumstances and the information you give us. So, like, of course, if everything is down, if markets are down, if this and that, our job is to mitigate your losses as much as we can and harvest tax losses for you. However, over the last 5 years, markets have been hitting all-time highs. There's no reason you should be disappointed with your returns, right? Like, and my CIO and I were like, that's like practically professional negligence to allow your clients to not benefit from your expertise. So either your expertise is inadequate and sucks, or you are not adequately serving your clients, or a combination of the two.
Yeah. And it was this new guy that we got handed off to, his first thing was that the former person had our investments into it wasn't aggressive enough. It was too, what do you call it? I don't know. What's that
Too
term?
conservative. It was too conservative. Too risk averse might have been the technical term. So, yeah, I mean, well, at least they did that, right? Because, which is, again, like, on the part of the former person, potentially professional negligence. I mean, I don't want to say because I'm not a lawyer, but it sounds to me like literally just insane, in my professional opinion, as a technical term, like insane, that your risk assessment was undermanaged. Because, like, so you saw from your client onboarding process that we had the Know Your Customer, the KYC questionnaire, which is through a custodian that you give us. And then we have a supplemental MLF questionnaire where we get to know you financially. And based on that, I don't remember the exact, like, your exact answers to your questionnaire, but my team does. Right. Yeah. Okay. But my team does. And I remember you telling me at dinner that you were comfortable with more risk tolerance and whatnot. So it is like every financial advisor, I believe it's a regulated requirement. But yeah, I'm pretty sure, don't fact check me on that. I'm pretty sure it's a regulated requirement that they have to do some kind of diligence, right? It could be a form, it could be an interview, it could be anything to get to know you financially in order to make appropriate recommendations. So I'm assuming that you did not lie to this person, the former financial advisor, and say, I'm super, super risk averse. So they either didn't do that diligence on you, which is professional negligence, now that I'm saying it out loud, or they just ignored your answers and did what they thought was best for you, which is also probably professional negligence. And like, if your risk tolerance
Mm-hmm.
was set too low, that's why
Mm-hmm.
you're not getting the returns that the
Right.
market is giving, because
Right.
risk and return are positively correlated, right? So the more
Right.
risk you're willing to take on, the more you might potentially gain. That being said, the more risk you're willing to take on, the more you might potentially lose, because nobody has a crystal ball and can predict where
Right.
markets are going to go.
Right.
So like, what I always tell my clients is, like, just to give you a benchmark, right?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, the so the S&P 500 has returned about 10.62% over the last 40 years.
Wow.
Now, it's unlikely that in any of those 40 years it actually returned 10.62%, but let's say you stayed invested in an S&P index fund for 40
Right.
years, you would have earned that like effective average of 10.62% compounded. Now, there are some, like, on a technical level, there are some timing differences in when you win and
Mm-hmm.
when you lose, but I use that as a benchmark because
Right.
if you are relatively risk tolerant and relatively comfortable with exposure to equities, meaning stocks,
Right.
um, you shouldn't be underperforming the benchmark indices like the S&P, like the NASDAQ, like the
Mm-hmm.
Dow, etc.
Right. Right. Gotcha. Gotcha. So I want to get into some questions too.
Please, I'm
And
sorry, I talk too much.
no, no, you're fine. I love it. That's what I love about you.
Oh my
Uh,
God, you're too kind. Don't encourage me.
one of the questions I had is, what are the most effective ways to save for retirement given the unique nature of earnings in the sex work industry? And are there any industry specific retirement um, saving strategies that you would recommend? Because, we all want to retire someday.
Yeah, and even if those of us like myself who are workaholics, like we're, and I know you and your partner sort of mentioned this, that you might just work until you're dead because you like working. You
Yeah.
still, like, retirement is a frame of mind, right? It's just,
Hmm.
the way I think about retirement is like when you get to your fuck you money number. That's what we call it in finance.
Yes.
Like, when I think of retirement as the financial point in your life where you no longer have to work.
Yep.
So, like, for some of us, we might actually stop working. For
Right.
others of us, we're going to keep working for whatever our reasons are, but we no longer need to work, right? So that's how I think about retirement.
Yes.
In terms of for saving strategies for adult entertainers and or
Hmm.
entrepreneurs, it's very similar, honestly. Um, I have a fully thought out YouTube video on this. So, Money Talks with Mia is it's a series of videos. They're average about 10 minutes each.
Okay.
And it's like a finance 101. It's like a
I
personal
love
finance
it.
101 for adult
Hmm.
entertainers that my co-founders and I created before we launched our company. Like, just to have, it's one of many free resources that I like to offer to our community. But I will recap it here in the best way that I can, which is,
Awesome.
so saving strategies for irregular income in general,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
So I think a few tips I would say, and savings has two components, right? It's like your income and your expenses. So on the earning side, there's there was an interesting, like, economic study about Uber drivers where it found that Uber drivers were being very inefficient in the way they allocated their hours
Hmm.
because they were trying to hit like an evenness in earnings for every shift or every week or every month or whatever it was. They ended up driving more hours when rates were lower and they were making less money, and fewer
Oh,
hours when rates were higher and they were making more money. And I see a lot of strippers making the same mistake.
okay.
So basically, like, they come in and they leave when they hit a number, but it might be a good
Hmm.
night and they might be on a roll. Or they try to hit the same number in a slow month or a slow week or on a slow day than they do on a busier day, week, or month.
Hmm.
So, how do we do the opposite of this, right?
Right.
So I'll give myself as an example. I just know that, and I think with other, it depends on how confident you are in your predictions of the cycles of when you make more money and less money. And then
Yes.
you're also constrained by your own, like, energy, mental health, et cetera, right? So
Hmm.
we're isolating the factor of, like, let's assume all else is equal. If it doesn't matter what hours you work, what days you work, like, no other constraints.
Hmm.
For example, for me, strip clubs in New York tend to be more profitable to work in from around mid-March through mid to end of June.
Oh,
And then again from about mid-September until the third week of December. And the 3 weeks leading up to Christmas are the most profitable to work, generally speaking. Obviously, there are some deviations, but
right.
that is the trend. I don't care why it's that way. It's not efficient for me to understand why it's that way.
Right.
It is just is that way, right? So because of this, I arrange my schedule as such. I clear up more time for stripping during my what I call stripper busy season, which is based
Yep.
on these periods. And I prioritize which nights I choose to work based on which nights tend to be more profitable.
Right.
And then within the constraints that I previously mentioned, like my mental health, my energy, my personal obligations, whatever. So let's say I have a week where I only have energy to work 2 nights. Instead of picking Monday and Tuesday, because that's the beginning of the week,
Right.
I'm probably going to pick Tuesday and Wednesday because those are traditionally my more profitable nights during busy season. So basically, in terms of the starter saving strategies, is to really optimize your earnings within your constraints for the highest return on your hours and your investments. So I'll give an example on the adult creator side. So once you let's say you're camming, right? And you know that it's most profitable to cam from let's say 11 p.m. until 1 a.m. And let's say you don't mind working those hours. So let's say you make on average, I don't know, $100 an hour camming from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m., but then you make $300 an hour camming from 11 p.m. to 1 a.m. And let's say that it doesn't really disrupt your sleep schedule. It's not a huge deal for you to do the night hours. Do the night hours, right? And also track that data so you know what that data is for you.
Yes.
And I would say also one of the mistakes that I see people in general, not just in this business, making is they do what they like to make money instead of what is profitable to make money. And there's a balancing act, right? You don't want to do something you hate, obviously, right? But you want to understand where your highest returns are. This is something that profitable businesses do, right? They look at their revenue streams, they look at their profit margins, and they're like, okay, stripping is this X profitable, escorting is this X profitable, content creation is this X profitable.
Yep.
So if you look at those things, one of the things that I do is I look at where I have the highest margins, right? So I'll just make up an example. Let's say escorting is my highest margin, but maybe I'm not fully booked, right? So then I move to my next highest margin activity. And let's say that's stripping, right? But and so if that's the answer and I can allocate more time during stripping and it's season, then I push my energy and time towards stripping. However, let's say escorting is my highest margin activity, but I'm not getting booked. And I've exhausted all of the things that I can do, like social media engagement, advertising, etc., to get more bookings. So, and it's slow season of the club, so that's not a great option. Then I go to my next most profitable option, which is, let's say, camp or whatever, or content creation. And I go down the list that way. So I'm optimizing my earnings and my margins. Now, on the expense side and saving side, I would say of saving strategies for adult entertainers and choppy income, right? So let's assume you've optimized your earnings and you're going to have higher earning periods and lower earning periods. I would say take your during your higher earning periods, right? So across the board, irrespective of your earning periods, you need to be reserving roughly 30% of what you take home for taxes, because if you had a W-2 job, those taxes would already be withheld by your employer. And as adult entertainers, we need to be prepared to pay quarterly estimated taxes and our taxes at the end of the year. You don't want to be caught off guard. I'll get to that in another question about taxes.
Okay.
But for this purposes, reserve 30%. You can put it in a savings account, you can leave it in your checking, you can put it in money market, doesn't matter too much. And you want to be making your quarterly estimated tax payments and then your payment at the end of the year. So you want to make sure you have money to do those things. And then during your higher earning periods, so actually I'll back up. Irrespective of earning periods, you want to build up between 3 to 6 months in liquid savings. Liquid meaning not like real estate, right? So, and I wouldn't say even stocks and bonds. I mean liquid in your checking, money market, high yield savings, whatever. Cash that you can immediately access without potentially sustaining a loss. So you want 3 to 6 months. based on your business and personal expenses. So, like, add up all of your business expenses,
Mm-hmm.
and like break out what's variable and what's fixed. So, a fixed
Right.
expense is like my rent. Variable is like condoms, right? For me as a full service
Right.
worker. So
Right.
like I use more condoms when I'm working more, fewer when I'm working less. And so you want to capture all of that to the extent that you can.
Mm-hmm.
And you want to have a sort of like a projection of what your expenses are on a running basis. And you want
Okay.
that by month, at a minimal level of detail. If you want to do it by week is fine.
Mm-hmm.
And um, so now that you have like a totality of your total expenses, and one good way to do this is, since we all have to file our taxes at the end of a year, you can look at last year,
Yes.
everything you spent.
Yes.
And that's your total annual. And then you can kind of like, if you're not really sure what your cadence of spending is, like as a quick and dirty way to do it is like, quick and dirty is a finance term when we like shortcut something and it's not
Right.
perfect, but it's good enough for now. So you can quick and dirty, like just take a monthly average of what your annual spending was last year, personal and business, add that
Mm-hmm.
together. And that is your, so that's your annual total expenditure. And then you want to base your savings, your liquid, like cash, meaning money markets, high yield savings, or checking account savings,
Yes.
based on 3 to 6 months of that.
Okay.
So, for a lot of us, it's easier to bank that during our higher earning periods, and
Right.
you want to have that ASAP. And that way, it removes a lot of your anxiety about, am I going to be able to cover my expenses during slow
Yes.
times, slow months? And it allows you to selectively work during optimal times.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one saving strategy. And then you look at, so like, I would say taxes first, and then
Mm-hmm.
emergency fund, and then you look at what's left over.
Yeah.
And one thing to note about your expenses is be realistic, right? Even
Mm-hmm.
if you are in terrible debt and you are spending more than you're making, you need to be realistic about what you're spending, right? So
Right.
be realistic. Don't be like, oh, well, I spent $1,000 on lattes last year, but I'm going to spend zero this year. That's not realistic.
Right.
So, so again, like a realistic 3 to 6 month savings that includes your personal and business spending, and
Mm-hmm.
then so taxes first, then emergency fund, then what's left over. You can look at saving strategies. So, based on your risk tolerance, like
Mm-hmm.
you can work with a financial advisor, you can do it yourself. You can like that's the surplus that's left over that you should be using toward investments
Okay.
and like
Okay.
long term savings.
Okay. And making that account with Mia Lee Financial.
So I have to give this disclaimer that because it's a public broadcast, to make my compliance officer happy. Um, Information provided here is for informational purposes only, and
Right.
Mia Lee Financial is not soliciting or selling any products or services on this broadcast because it is a public broadcast. However, you, Ruby, are welcome to make whatever endorsement you would like as a client.
There you go. There you go. Which I did.
Yes, thank you. I appreciate that. No, there's just there's a lot of compliance and
Oh,
regulation
I
around the
can.
financial industry, and there should be, right? Like I think that there should be. So I'm always careful to like stay on the right side of that because
I
I'm
can
not
only
shady.
imagine,
Yeah.
right? Oh my gosh. Well, that seems like a good strategy. And that is what I have always done, personally, is in my business is get the taxes saved for, then it's whatever, I have my budget monthly business expenses
Already ahead of
down
the
to the
game.
month, and so I know exactly how much I have to make and, you know, just to pay the bills. And
Yeah,
so,
already ahead of the game. Look at you.
and then, yeah, and I track my income by day and by month. And yeah,
Amazing. Music to my ears as your financial advisor. I'm like, I love this.
I'm a spreadsheet girl. I got to know, like every day I have to know where I'm at.
Oh, me too. Yeah, I'm
Because
a
how can
spreadsheet
you
girl too.
plan your goals and know if you're hitting them,
Yeah,
if you're not?
exactly.
Awesome. Do you can you advise on investment options that are more suitable? Now I know you mentioned that uh, high yield savings accounts are a good way to go, and I've heard that over and over and over. But yet, where do I research? where a good one is, what a good one is?
Great question. So high yield savings accounts are not universally a good way to go. High yield savings accounts are a good option under certain circumstances, right?
Okay.
So they are one potential option for your emergency savings. Um, they are one potential option if you're very, very risk averse. And they tend to be a better option when interest rates are higher versus when interest rates are lower. So, like, I do not recommend, depending on your financial circumstances, right? Like, if you're cutting it really, really close with your cash flows and you can't afford to take any risk, say in index funds or equities or even bond or debt investments, then sure, high yield savings. But I think for a lot of us who do have that surplus or in a better financial position, then I don't want all of your money in high yield savings because
Right.
you're not getting the best return for your risk tolerance.
Mm-hmm.
And in terms of high yield savings, I mean, it's pretty easy. Like, if you decide that that's what you want to do with either your
Mm-hmm.
emergency savings or all of your money or whatever it is,
Mm-hmm.
just Google like best high yield savings account and you should
Okay.
find options. And you can also ask your bank, right? So ask your bank like what their high yield savings options are.
Yeah. I
And that,
bank with credit union because they seem to be the least or the least have the least amount of issue, I think, with the adult industry or sex workers. And mine doesn't actually offer a high yield savings. So that was
right.
kind of why.
So if that's the case, right, like you can either open a high yield savings with another or with another institution,
Okay.
or you can ask them what cash equivalent products they do have in lieu of a high yield savings, right?
Okay.
So they might have money markets, they might have CDs, they might have other things, and
Right.
those are going to give you similar returns. And the general rule with high yield savings and this category. So I look at investments. So financial professionals will break down investments into three categories in terms of type of investments. So you have cash equivalents, which are things
Okay.
like high yield savings, money market CDs, and then you have debt investments, which are like municipal bonds,
Okay.
corporate bonds, etc. And then you have equities. And so cash equivalents are the least risky. You're going to get the least amount of return. Debt investments, like debt instruments, credit
Mm-hmm.
investments, like bonds, in the
Uh-huh.
simplest example, like corporate bonds, right? You're going to get more return than cash equivalents, but you're taking on more risk. And but then they're going to give you, generally speaking, with some exceptions and outliers, a lower return than equities, which are
Okay.
stocks or like index funds or things that are related to stocks,
Okay.
or like packages of stocks. Those are going to give you the highest returns because they are the most risky of these categories.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
So in terms of a balanced investment portfolio, and this is going to depend on individual circumstances. This is why I can't
Sure.
give financial advice on a public broadcast because I don't know, like, and I'm saying proverbial you. I know your circumstances because you're a client, right? But like for the average listener or viewer, I don't know their circumstances, so I can't tell you like what's a good allocation for you
Gotcha.
between asset
Gotcha.
classes.
Gotcha. And I think we already answered this question: what types of bank accounts are best? You talked about that, different ways for savings and that kind of thing. What about uh, payment processing? What's your view on the Cash Apps and the Venmos and that kind of thing for sex workers? Can you talk about experience that you have, or maybe?
So I also have an episode on this on my YouTube channel, which covers this in
Nice.
more depth. Um, I think it's the one on. I think it's the first one, like navigating financial stigma,
Okay.
and it talks about like how to interact with banks, et cetera, et
Mm-hmm.
cetera. But I'll give again a quick rundown here.
Sure.
So payment processors are always going to be an issue for adult
Yeah.
entertainers, and I'll try to do what I can to mitigate like the issues that we deal with in this
Mm-hmm.
answer. So I'll be real with you as an adult entertainer. Even if you're doing a fully legal form of sex work, like online content creation,
Mm-hmm.
you're gonna lose something at some point.
Oh
Let's
yeah.
just be real about it, okay? So how to prevent the losses of your payment processors if you haven't lost them yet. A few tips and tricks for that are payments on Venmo. Tell clients who are sending you things on Venmo to not get your account or theirs flagged or
Yes.
shut down by not writing stupid things
Right.
in the memo, because the memo is required.
Mhm.
So stupid things are deposit,
Yep.
hotel, like session fee, all of that.
Oh,
So what most of my clients write is golf,
golf.
because I'm very bad at golf. I've incurred a lot of expenses as a result of being bad at golf. and and like when I receive larger amounts, whatever that means to you, so like let's say I get like $1,000 or $2,000 on Venmo, like super realistic that I am being reimbursed for $2,000 in golf expenses, like, and that's just me because of like my spending pattern, right?
Right. Right.
So like give your clients instructions on what to write in the memos to like not get both of you in hot water. And then I lost my, so when you do lose an account, and I'm saying when because you will eventually,
Oh
I
yeah.
lost my Cash
I've
App.
been banned from Stripe for life. So
That's really, really common. So I'm glad you brought that up. So I tell my friends, uh, just don't use Stripe, because
yeah.
they have policies against supporting adult businesses. That's their
Hmm.
business. Just be aware of it. For those of us who are working in person, like I work in person, it is not industry standard to allow clients to make credit card payments. So you don't need to fucking offer that shit. Oh, so how did I deal with it when I lost my Cash App? So
Yes.
initially how I was dealing with it was I had a workaround. So I had a civilian friend who needed the money, and I was like, hey, are you willing to? So I initially had set up so I lost my Cash App account that I could cash out directly to my bank.
Yes.
So initially I just had a few like backup burner Cash App accounts that were like
Sure.
just not tied to anything. They were like unverified and whatever. So you can, with those accounts on Cash App, you can move money between Cash App accounts, but you can't like take it out.
Oh.
So that was my initial workaround. I had unverified Cash App accounts, and clients were sending me deposits of money on that. And then I was sending that to a civilian friend with the full disclosure. I was like, listen, you might lose your Cash App for doing this for me. I will give you a 5% fee on all transactions. So
Hmm.
you cash this out, and then revert the funds to me once it hits your account with that like 1 to 3 business day delay. So there's no
Sure.
fee. And then you revert it to me on Zelle, right? Like as a person, I
Gotcha.
declare it as business income, but she will send it to me as a personal transaction on Zelle. So that was my workaround for about a year that lasted. And
Yeah.
then Cash App eventually caught on, and they tagged my phone or my IP or my whatever. And
Right.
so I couldn't have a burner Cash App account at all. So now I'm just done. No more Cash App for me. It is what it is.
Yeah.
I just deal with it.
Right.
So those are my answers for that. And
Okay.
then I will also say, with appropriate legal disclosures and caveats, there is a platform that I endorse called UPay, and it is a gifting
Yes.
platform. It is not a payment
Yes.
platform.
Yes.
So I love UPay because they are made and built for the adult creator community.
Hmm.
So to the extent that like you are receiving gifts from clients, UPay is my favorite one for a litany of reasons. They're built for our industry, so they do a manual review before they close down anyone's accounts. Like they'll give
Nice.
adult creators an opportunity to fix anything on their profile that is
Sure.
non-compliant, that will result in issues. They offer immediate payouts for cash gifts. So like clients can just put in their credit card if they want to gift you an amount like of money, not like a thing.
Right.
Typically you get an immediate payout about 90% of the time. And the 10% is like they'll hold a transaction for about a week, because they are they're making sure that they don't have to deal with chargebacks and then charging you
Right.
back. So that's a great gifting platform. And then I think that's all the advice I have to give, aside from what I don't remember is on my YouTube channel for payment
Great.
processing and
I
gifting.
I need to check out that YouTube channel for sure. And yes, I just signed up for UPay. I'm excited to start using it because I had two Throne accounts and both got banned.
So the interesting thing is, like, on the back end, I mean, and most of us don't need to think about this, but I think about this as a money person.
Mhm.
Um, Throne is not going to invest in the systems and processes to support the adult industry that UPay has, because they were built for streamers on Twitch, right? So if that's their core business and that's where they're making the most of their money, they don't need to incur additional compliance costs to support adult entertainers. So it's
Right.
easier for them just to close the account. Whereas, like, yes, and UPay is built for us for this industry, so they are incentivized financially to work with us.
Yeah, I'm excited to use it. Awesome. Well,
And they don't pay me for that endorsement, by the way.
We're not getting
My
paid.
team, so my team, my chief investment officer and chief operating officer, we actually had a pretty intimate conversation with the UPay co-founders, and they reviewed the processes and the redundancies that the companies put in place in order to support like our industry, and they were comfortable with my endorsement pursuant to their review. So it's like a pretty informed endorsement.
That's amazing.
And I use UPay as well myself.
That is amazing. Yeah, I'm excited to start using that platform, and I need to get them on the podcast too.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I highly recommend that.
So as we close out, any final thoughts, advice, and also let people know, if you can, where they can find you. MiaLeeFinancial.com, correct?
Yes, MiaLeeFinancial.com is our website. You can follow us on Instagram and X, both at Mia Lee Financial. Every Wednesday at 1 p.m., I am live on X Spaces, talking about a current event, hot topic in financial news, breaking it down for our industry, and repeat on Instagram live with video every Tuesday at 2 p.m. on Instagram. My individual, or like my personal, not really personal, my individual socials are Mia Lee NYC on X and at Mia Lee _NYC on Instagram. And you'll find me on this and various other podcasts and whatnot. My Mia Lee individual website is mialeevip.com, and you'll find a list of my media appearances. So most of those are like either features of me or which are not useful for this purposes, but my podcast appearances and all of the financial literacy talks that I've given, like they should be consolidated on my media appearances page on mialeevip.com.
Excellent. That is awesome. Well, thank you for making the time. This has been so helpful.
My passion for our industry, and if I were to leave a legacy on the adult industry, I would love for it to be financial literacy and empowerment. And I am of the biased opinion that the majority of the problems that we have in the adult industry are financially and economically driven. And so one of the reasons that I started doing my pro bono work and continuing to do it and launch my company is because I believe that if we can move the needle on that, we can change the plight of or we can change the experience that creators and adult entertainers have in this business if we can move the needle on everyone's financial, not only literacy, right, because that's just knowledge, but also empowerment, right?
Right.
So the reason why I launched my company is because as someone who came from Wall Street, and we know from some of our wealthier clients or just friends, a big piece of financial empowerment and comfort and safety is having passive income.
Yeah.
And the ethos of my company is to give adult entertainers access to a path for wealth building and retirement savings and financial security and confidence and alleviating financial trauma through that wealth building and having passive income. And I've had so many adult entertainers approach me before I launched my company to offer me money. Can you do my taxes for money? Can you manage my money for money? And I was like, I'm not taking a penny from this industry until I have built a business with the processes, infrastructure, and the team such that I can sell my industry a product or service that, one, I would buy myself as an informed individual with access to privilege, and two, a product or service that is comparable or better than the best that you could get on Wall Street for retail investors. And three, my co-founders and I, we're all Asian. So we spend a lot of time, work, and effort and our own money on structuring the business so that our fees are far below market because we're all cheap.
I love love that. Well, I think what you're doing is giving people hope who thought that they might not ever be an investor or have a future or save, for that other half of life that's supposed to be so amazing. So thank you for all that you're doing and all the information that you're putting out there.
You're so welcome. And thank you for the honor of being on your podcast. And thank you for being a client.
You bet. Well, I can't wait to see what you have coming up as you expand and grow. Thank you so much, Mia.
Thanks, Ruby.